Scott Chesney, the director, couldn't be here tonight, but I'm volunteering to take some slings and arrows for him and pass along questions as needed. But I can go ahead and give you the kind of the 30,000 foot view of why we're here and talk about what you've been looking at so far and give you the outline of tonight. Then I'll turn it over to the rest of our team to talk about the specifics, the placemaking and code options and resilience side of what we're doing here. So as you may know, well, first of all, actually, show of hands, who was here for the last round? I see a few familiar faces. Okay, a couple of people. So this is the second of two of these placemaking, we call them placemaking workshops. This is still very early stages of the comp plan update. The reason why we're here tonight is because we had that first meeting where we asked people about different sort of high level development concepts, looked at some pictures. And where we're at now is, I don't know if you saw in the paper or online, but the environmental impact statement scoping notice went out just yesterday. So that's really kicking off like the real detailed study portion of potential development options for Spokane County for the 2026 comp plan update. So what we're not talking about here tonight is, I mean, people have questions about the EIS, feel free to ask, but we're not going to be getting into the specifics of like environmental study. That'll be coming in a couple weeks. Actually, next week there's a scoping meeting. So just FYI, if you haven't been to the county's website for the comp plan update, I encourage you to do so. There's a scoping meeting coming up next Wednesday, I believe. Is that right? Next Wednesday, the 7th, and it's virtual, so you can find all that information on the website. What we are going to be talking about tonight is the main task the county has, and all the cities by the 2026 comp plan update, is to figure out how to accommodate a population and employment growth and do it in a way that's consistent with state law and with the community's vision. You know, sometimes those things can be in tension, as I'm sure you know, but what we're trying to do here is look at when we do the EIS, when we study potential changes to zoning code, other development regulations, the land use map, the zoning map, we have to do it in a way that there's a lot of sort of, you know, things from the past that we need to change and correct, but there's also a lot of opportunity to do things differently going forward. And so one of the reasons why we're all here tonight is because the county the commissioners have indicated that they want to have future development and future planning for development in, especially in the urban areas, but also in the rural areas as well, be more financially sound and be more like places instead of just subdivisions on the edge of town. You know, it's for a variety of reasons, which we can get into a little bit later, but we're going to be tonight talking about what we heard from you and the rest of the people who were in the first round of workshops back in February, how we responded to that, and then ask you to weigh in on some, after the presentation's over, to take a look at these boards, get some sticky dots, and tell us, give us some ideas, some direction on some particular code and policy ideas that we think are responding to what we heard last time. And then this will all, at the end of this presentation, I'll come up and talk about what the next steps are specifically in the planning process. But we're going to take this information and what you have to do to be consistent with the Growth Management Act and all that other good stuff, and splice it together into some alternatives for the Board of County Commissioners to consider as part of the comp plan update. Any questions about broadly why we're here? Sweet. Then we will get right into it. We've got Ian and Bob here from Makers, which are part of the consultant team, and we also have Carson and Riley from Cascadia, and I believe they are up first, right? Or yeah, your slides are first, right? So I'll bring Ian and Carson up, and we can get going on the presentation. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks everyone. So like I said, I'm Carson, and this is my coworker Riley. We're from Cascadia Consulting Group. We're working with the county on a different project, but it's somewhat interwoven. On the comp plan, we're building a climate resilience element, and basically today You can check out our stations over here. We have a map of North Spokane County where we're looking at different climate hazards like wildfire smoke, extreme heat, drought, and basically how that impacts the county at large, but specifically looking at how it potentially will impact this area. So at this mapping activity over here, we can you can put some pins in where you personally experience some of these climate hazards or also other hazards, and just learn more about our project that is starting with the county, and will be over in 2026 as well with this content update as well. So if you have any questions or want to learn more about the project, feel free to come over here and ask me or Riley any questions.
Make sure your pins on their full map. They're all pins we get showing different hazards and effects of climate impacts. All the better. More information than we have. So we, me and Bob, are here to talk about sort of the placemaking component of this effort. The comprehensive plan update, very big project. This is just one piece of it, but these meetings have been organized around. Placemaking is a lens that we're applying to, especially looking at, well, to the comprehensive plan update, to try to pull together disparate elements that are dealt with, so that they come together to be more than some of their parts. So you've got land use, which deals with buildings, basically, what kinds of buildings. You've got the transportation, you've got parks, you've got streets and roads and trails, and those can all be dealt with separately. But ideally, they're coming together in a way that is making places, that is, places that are unique, that have meaning, that are special, that that is not just an unidentifiable mass of roads and buildings and stuff. So that's what these the policies that we've got posters about and that Bob will be speaking to are organized around. Those are trying to apply that goal in a way that within the tools that the county has in its toolbox, and especially with development regulations. Places, they can be, can be anything, right? Can be different, can be rural and urban and public and private and many different, and residential and commercial, or a mix of all of the above. But they share some things in common, that they're accessible and connected to other places. They kind of form a landscape of meaning, right, with different places that are related to each other, and you can go from one to the other. But they're all comfortable, promote a good image. They may be beautiful, or they may be just good enough. But they make people, they don't repel people. They in fact attract people, that people want to come together and take part in what's going on, or even just enjoy being there. And that may also be, in the neighborhood. It feels good to be there, and it feels good to be out and be with your neighbors. Because these are social environments that where people will come together, and people come together, different people from different backgrounds, people at different life stages, people there for different goals, and they'll interact, and each of those interactions becomes unique and different. And the more interactions there are, the more the value and more value is being created. Social value. So that's the kind of the preamble. We'll be, again, as I said, we're trying to take that high level stuff and look at the county's tools that it has when thinking about new development that's going to happen, and sort of translate that into sort of the policy and the development regulations side of it. And that's what we'll be getting into more, to set that up and to form that concept and policy development. We had the previous round of meetings in February, and also an online component, and also there is a online meeting in January. Anyhow, so we got some good input from all of these different flavors, kind of in each of the different ones. We did West Plains, Spokane Valley, and which it was in Spokane Valley, but it was focused on the East Metro, urban growth areas, unincorporated urban growth areas. And then here in Meade High School focused on the North Metro unincorporated growth area. And her different feedback at each meeting, which has been great. Trying to bring it all together into something coherent. We heard that when new development happens, because some new development will happen in some places. So when that occurs, it should be done well. We should integrate where possible trails and open space. These should be designed thoughtfully, and also with affordability and connectivity. So it's not just isolated things just happening separated from each other. We want these developments to bring investment. We want them to be additive to the county, positive contributions rather than extractive. So that means better infrastructure, funding for services and amenities that people from the surrounding neighborhoods can make use of. Could be a new park or a new business, which wouldn't otherwise be there. There is also concern that we heard about things that can come with new development, increasing traffic, increasing crime, very high population densities, a loss of rural character or suburban character even. And there were serious concerns about environmental conditions, and especially in the West Plains, but not exclusively, related to groundwater contamination, flooding, and other water-related problems that are slightly different from flooding. What is it? High risk. I'm sorry. It gets not technical very quickly. Anyhow, the problems with too much water, and loss of wildlife habitat or wildlife corridors, because there's a lot of wildlife migration that happens throughout this whole area. And there's also what we heard was skepticism sometimes, and some absence of trust in the county, that the county in the past not always done this as well as we would like it to be done. So this comprehensive plan effort, it's really is a major refresh, if not a complete rewrite of the existing comprehensive plan, which was passed in 2001 and has been sort of slightly updated over the years. This will be a more significant update, and it's an effort to turn over a new leaf, and to kind of do things right from here forward. And which is part of this is having community meetings and building relationships with folks. So that's going to be a long-term project that will not be completed tonight, or even when the plan is adopted. We also showed images of neighborhoods, of parts of cities, of buildings, of clusters of buildings, to try and get people's reactions. And we show those in the meetings, the West Plains here and over on the east side of the Spokane urban area, East Metro. And we showed it online, and there was also a Survey Monkey version. You can still go to it if you have not and participate. There's a QR code on that poster, and should be a link on the kind of website. That'll be open for a little while longer if you want to contribute to this. We have some top scoring images. There was the trail-oriented neighborhoods. This is like a subdivision, typical kind of subdivision neighborhood, but it's got some integrated open space and trails. There's a nice example of we call it a third place, because it's a place we can come together. It's a beverage pub. It was just a very nicely community-oriented commercial building that was integrated with surrounding neighborhoods. There was also a similar thing. Number 3 was a cluster of businesses organized around a little open space. So again, this is a commercial area. People are spending money at businesses, but it's designed in such a way that they can get out, get some play together, people can socialize. It's a nice thing. There's number 4 was a craftsman style duplex, which was cool to see. That's it's an attached housing type, but it's done thoughtfully. It integrates with its context, and people respond well to that. And then finally, there was the streetcar suburb that's a reference to more than 100 years ago when there were the streetcars all over Spokane, and there was around those streetcar lines, there would be a main street and sometimes apartments and houses and parks and a kind of a neighborhood pattern that can work pretty well, and people responded well to that. Some things people did not respond positively to, which is also helpful, if not more helpful even to see, is some multifamily housing, specifically in Ellensburg, that has very poor integration of parks and trails, and with the surrounding neighborhoods and connectivity. And also an example here in the city of Spokane of where you have really, if I can point to the TV screen. No, it doesn't really work. Okay. The second image down is the separated densities where you have these neighborhoods that are kind of walled off from each other. Again, this one might be houses, that one might be apartments, this one might be townhouses, and there's no relationship between them. Some commercial areas of development where it's a lot of asphalt and concrete, parking, really wide roads. People didn't respond super well to that either, or to the houses, the kind of subdivision houses where it's all garages all you see out front, and it doesn't even present a front door or porch to the street. So that was all very helpful as well. We try to take these inputs, swirl them around together, and create a placemaking vision that can help us guide this effort.
Okay, thanks, Ian. I'm Bob Engford, partner at Makers. Again, Makers is leading the placemaking portion and assisting with the county, and Facet. Facet is the lead firm in this. And Matt, who you already spoke to, I'll try to speak up. So yes, we decided, we took a stab at distilling down the findings and the direction that we were going, and create a placemaking vision. And I'll just read this out to you. And then the following slides after this kind of dig into some of the components. So Spokane County suburban lands are a mix of vibrant and connected communities. They feature integrated parks, trails, natural areas, and civic gathering places, a mix of housing and pedestrian-oriented or friendly neighborhood center. By neighborhood center, we mean the shops and grocery stores and places you get your services in the neighborhood. They will be resilient and integrate natural features as a community amenity. So again, this was a first stab at taking a statement of pulling all these things together. And it's a poster up there. And now we're going to get into some of the key policies related to placemaking. And we came up with really 6 main policies that are really important to this. And mostly, again, since we're talking about the county's urban growth areas, that's really what this is focused on. So these policies would address the urban growth areas here in North Metro, but we've also had workshops in West Plains earlier today and last night out in East Valley.
And so those are the yellow areas on the maps.
Yes. So I'll dig into these. The first one is just integrated environmental design and resiliency being the first subject. And the idea is, let's design communities to be resilient and integrate, take advantage of the environmental features and make them amenity rather than just simply walling them off. Let's make them amenity and part of what makes this place special. And so some of the details there are, identifying, protecting the critical areas and integrating those, addressing and treating stormwater, don't build in floodplains and try to build the homes, a couple feet above the street so we don't have urban flooding, conducting fire-wise development practices, providing multiple ways in and out of neighborhoods. So not only to provide for some of the connectivity benefits, but if there are incidents, it's easier to mobilize and get into and out of the neighborhood. and also integrating more shade trees for summer heat. And either Riley or Carson, we've got to maybe talk about the poster that's there to integrate some of these
Yeah.
resiliency, climate change ideas.
Thanks, Bob. So here, I know it's kind of hard to see on the tiny screen far away, but we have a larger visual over here, just trying to talk about placemaking and resilience and how we can combine those together. So on this visual, we see a neighborhood that has different types of housing types for any specific type of person. So single family homes, apartments, ADUs, we have duplexes, all that kind of things. And then also connected in with that is natural features like we were just talking about with like parks and lots of trees, and then also trying to incorporate other climate resilience measures into building homes. So making sure that we have like rain gardens or green roofs or things to manage rainfall and stormwater runoff, and just trying to integrate development as much as we can to be as sustainable to with the community, Spokane County community and other local neighborhoods. So yeah, if you want to learn more and like see some of those small text items, feel free to come over here. Much bigger to see visually.
Thank you, Carson.
Bob, if I can just add real quick.
Sure.
You'll see that kind of illustration with the houses and the streets and stuff several times. It's not a particular proposal for any specific location. It's just an example that illustrates different aspects of the stuff that we're talking about. So we had some people in the first workshop saying like, oh, I don't like this proposal because of the the width of the alleys or something. It's like, that's too specific. This is just an example that illustrates the big concepts that we're talking about today. It's not a specific proposal for any place. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, so in this case, the second policy concept is street connectivity. And so here it illustrates an example of creating a connected grid of streets. And again, particularly important when you're doing subdivisions. And, like out here, many of the areas are kind of spoken for. In fact, in talking about the streets are existing and you've got subdivisions, and it's really hard to change once you've platted the land and done the subdivision. It's just a lot tougher. So the idea is let's get it right when on some of these bigger sites when you're first developing it. And do it in a way that you can, not everybody has to drive. So short trips might be easy and attractive to walk or ride a bike. And you could also do this in a way that it creates a sense of place. So here's a code concept that we've used before that tries to, you don't have to create this perfect grid of streets. You can mix it up and have maybe some larger blocks and have trails break those up, or alleys or private streets in some cases. And you could kind of mix and match to get the connectivity that you need. And you got some good examples out here, out at Liberty Lake near where we had our meeting last night, along the Centennial Trail. They've done a really good job of taking advantage of the Centennial Trail and creating kind of that trail-oriented development there. And here you can see the pattern with the streets in the blue and the alleys and the trails in the brown. And a little further to the west is another good example of a development that's done that. And again, you can see the pattern. And they've also, this is almost a segue to the next part. This is called, I believe, Half Moon Park. And so the whole subdivision radiates, and they've turned that into a kind of a character defining feature of that whole neighborhood. So again, trails, speaking of trails, at the outset, this is your chance at the beginning to get those trails in, because we all know once subdivisions in, it's just a lot harder to create trails. And so the idea or the concept is to plan for and implement an expanded network of trails and new development. There's an example from Boise that's along the river. It's been really popular. And there's another example we drew up in a different county, but just illustrating how you can create these off-street trails they could form a backbone and be a character defining feature and provide park and recreational amenity and asset for the community. And a way that you can code this in your regulations to actually get it is say something like this: provide 1 foot of trail for each 3 feet of subdivision perimeter. And so an example of implementing that code is this. This is was working in Post Falls about 8 or 9 years ago. And this is an example site there where we tested this rule and created a fictitious subdivision. And this is comes out to about that number, complying with that code and creating a trail that goes through a park and then goes between these homes that would then front on the trail and might have vehicular access elsewhere. But it's not just trails along a side. It's not just sidewalks. It's a separate trail off the street for the most part. And then here's another visual with showing development around it. And then here's just some other visual examples that have been integrated into another code. And it's taught looking more at the subdivision scale examples, again, of integrated trails. And just like that, integrating parks. And doing that at the outset, making sure that parks are just not this leftover piece on the edge of development, but that are integrated in that they're visible and accessible from homes. So again, a code concept for that would be, that we've used before, is at least 60% of the park perimeter shall be bound by either streets or dwelling units that face the street. So this is an example of these two, or an example of the second part. Here you've got homes that are served by alleys in the back, but there's a sidewalk in the front and the homes face the park. So you got a lot of eyes on the park. Just like this here, you got townhomes and they each have their entries here, but they got garages in the back elsewhere, eyes on the space. And then these other examples of streets that go all the way around. So it serves the neighborhood. And you've got great examples of that, not too far from here. Corbin Park is a great example, completely surrounded by Waverly and Park, and improving the whole area around it. And another example that I jogged to this morning out at Kendall Yards, Olmsted Green Park, which has got a street around it and kind of what some of the neighboring commercial or restaurants around it. And then this is a pad for future development that will then face the park. I believe the fourth, or the next policy component of the 6 is streetscapes and designing your streets and getting them right, and setting some standards for the different street types. So you want to design streets so you minimize pavement widths. Streets need to be wide enough to accommodate the traffic that you have, but they don't need to be too wide that they promote people from speed racing or just use of excessive resources, or just look excessively wide. You also want to provide comfortable pedestrian access. So a big part of that is having planting strips and street trees to separate the cars from the pedestrians, integrating street trees for shade. And another part is variety, and allowing some flexibility to have different street widths, maybe on-street parking, maybe there's on-street parking on both sides or one side, allowing sort of a mixture to meet the situation. So here's examples, couple good ones from Spokane, again showing an appropriate kind of cross section, not too wide enough to serve the purpose, but not too wide that promotes speeding. Planting strips with trees that are going to grow up bigger for shade. Here's another example south here. This is quite a bit skinnier, but trying to get away from this type of a setup where it just looks like you don't see hardly any trees. It's just cars, and you got the rolled curbs and mostly just asphalt. Another part of this is promoting streetscape design and orientation so that the developments are more fronting on the streets rather than walling themselves off from the street like this. And so this example is sort of an alternative to this design. They could have done this same design. This is in Bozeman where I did some planning, and in this case, they've got an arterial, but they've got homes with alleys and bigger setbacks here, rather than doing this walled off design in kind of dividing the neighborhoods and to kind of takes away from even creating a sense of neighborhood. So pulling it all together now, neighborhood design is kind of taking all these features, integrating environmental, street connectivity, trail and park integration, and these streetscape policies, and packaging it all together to create neighborhoods. And another part of that is integrating a mixture of different housing types. You know, when you do the developments, integrating that mixture. And again, that last point of emphasizing neighborhood facing design rather than walled off inward facing design. So kind of a part about neighborhood design that we've also been talking about, at least in, you know, if you're creating new developments, trying to accommodate a mixture of housing types. So it's not only just single family detached, but duplexes and cottages and accessory dwelling units, those other mixture of housing types, because kind of the point of this graphic is for, you know, that a lot of us end up living in different housing types in different stages of our lives. So I know I have. So this tries to depict, you know, one person in the different housing types they live in the different stages. So after they graduate, might be living in the fourplex. And then, you know, moving in with a significant other, end up maybe in a cottage house, a little bit bigger, nicer, having a separate little small cottage. And then the first time homeowner, living in a townhouse. That's kind of what my wife and I, our first ownership was in a townhouse. And then with the growing family, they end up in a single family home. And then like a percentage of couples, there might be a separation, and where you might go down to a duplex. And then later on, you might be an empty nester and not need so much area. Maybe you're in an accessory dwelling unit, and then a multi-generational household. You might be in that kind of a situation with your family, and you might. That's when it's good to have like a detached accessory dwelling unit off of your home. So just something to think about in terms of creating a community that accommodates this multi-generational mixing all the life stages. And again, this is just that same kind of neighborhood concept. And this was actually from another project that we drew up. And what it was this was a strawberry farm. It was in an urban growth area. And we were asked to, you know, we needed to look at zoning. And this particular community, they wanted to get it right, you know, because when it was developed, it was going to be there forever, basically. So they wanted to get the zoning and the visuals kind of right to get to get some of the things they wanted. They wanted to have it. They didn't want to have a walled off space. They wanted it to be more welcoming. They wanted to integrate. They had a regional, like a rail trail back here, and they wanted to have some things connect to that. They wanted a park. Again, mixture of housing types, and then sort of a modified grid. There was lower density homes to the north of it. And so what we drew up is kind of, that's where we put mostly the single family homes. And then we put more of the higher intensity stuff in the middle of the site to try to be sensitive to what was around it. So this is a type of thinking, at least, that we would, that the policy would encourage. And this kind of leads to the land use map, because every county has to have a future land use map with land use categories. And so this is impossible to read, but it is, I promise you, a screenshot of the county's land use category, land use map with its categories. You can see up there the legend that they got all these different categories. The purpose of this is, these are used to guide decisions on zoning and in the development regulations. So it's really important to the comprehensive plan and in some of the next phases that this plan will get into. So there are, right now there are just way too many land use categories. And I think it's been cobbled together over time, for instance. And so this chart, confusing chart, does a little bit of crosswalk. On the left, these are all of the existing land use categories. And for instance, you can see here, there's a lot of commercial categories. Regional commercial, I think we can kind of keep the same, but there's like 4 of them that are sort of mixed use. And we think that we can combine those in a mixed use village or some name like that. Industrial, we kind of leave alone. Residential, mostly the same, other than that we think we could probably combine medium and high density residential. But one aspect of it, I think, is you need to look at existing, a lot of areas are already developed and you kind of want to be sensitive to that. But then you have areas that aren't developed, like West Plains, some areas, actually even the quarry just north of here is a bigger site. They should have a little more flexibility for perhaps what they do. And so we're proposing a new designation neighborhood where you might have more flexibility to put different uses there and let them come up with a plan for how that works. And again, this might be an example of that, where maybe if you're just doing the zoning map, you don't quite know, if you got a blank slate, you might not know exactly how to put it out. So this concept provides a little, you can have some policies, but you provide a little bit more flexibility for how you do it. And what we do propose is, right now for each land use category, they have just like a paragraph of text that describes them. But what I like to provide a little more guidance to everybody and predictability direction is to lay them out like this. So this is an example, residential medium density. What I'd like to do is to have a clear purpose statement, locational criteria, principal uses and densities, and then identify what are the implementing zones that implement this category. And so I'll go through this for you. Purpose, residential medium density, say provide for a mixture of single, middle, and multifamily housing types. So it's kind of with the mix in that case. Locational criteria, and this is important, intended for areas now characterized by and or appropriate for a mixture of housing types with a close proximity to commercial services, transit, and or parks and other recreational amenities. So not allowing for willy-nilly, just because someone wants to upzone their property, they got to meet the criteria. So it's trying to create more of a plan but more of a predictability aspect to this. And then principal uses and densities, in this case, all residential uses, including middle housing forms and low to mid-rise apartment buildings. It tries to be more form oriented rather than saying, well, this is appropriate for 10 to 15 units per acre. Because a lot of people don't understand what that means. We're trying to focus on the form elements there. And then again, dictating what the implementing zones are. So at the end of the day, if someone wants a zone change, they would have to meet the criteria, and their implementing zone would have to be on this list. So how could this work with the county's areas? So one example is here, again, there were all those different mixed use type zones. And we are, I believe, right here right now, but there's the quarry just north of here, for instance. And I can't remember because the colors are so similar. I can't remember what exact zone that is right now, but I think the concept is that those, oh, there it is, Urban Activities Center is the current land use category, but that would be consolidated with other mixed use designations. In many of the cases, the residential low density in the yellow, those probably end up just staying the same. So you can see there's just a few medium and high density ones, and so those ones will likely just stay in the area. But that's what we'll get into in this next phase in the next 2 months here, as we're going to need to develop alternatives for the environmental impact statement for the comp plan. You have a question?
Yeah, this map is actually old because this wall from Division to Highway 2 of apartments and duplexes. So there's not just a few there, there's a lot.
Yeah, this is from the.
So
This is
that,
from the county website,
so
for
this
current
is old.
GIS.
I'm letting you know, this is old, and if you want to take a little walk, we can go for a walk.
Well, what's on the ground might be
They differ from what is.
different from what's on the map.
regulations, Which is what this is actually.
Well, then the map is old. That's just what I'm letting you know. The high density, I'm just letting you know, that is inaccurate.
Yeah, I think we looked at some pictures of some of those places last time. I think that maybe you, in fact, it might have been you showing us, you like pulled up your phone and showed us some pictures of some of it,
Yeah,
so.
it's from Highway 2 to Division, both sides. So that's wrong. And that I do know the people up there on that Mill Road, they're fighting a lot of that because there's actually a lot more issues coming up. So I don't know if that's actually been switched or not.
So I think again here, the idea is to create a little bit more of a clear, intentional plan as to where we might go. And I know that there's been some fishy things that have happened in the past with the decision. And the idea here is to create a little more intentional plan with this. And
So
that's kind of where we're going.
if you don't mind me asking, whose idea is this that, I mean, obviously things are coming no matter what, even though we don't like it and I'd love to just move somewhere very far away. Is this the plan, is to do a mixed, because I know as a homeowner, I don't want an apartment right next to me. The mixed use that it's all friendly and no walls, that's not the north side. We didn't move from the north side to be friendly and lovey-dovey.
Yeah. What I'm
You
saying
know,
is.
you're saying, you're giving examples of Boise and Bozeman. We're not that. We're not the South Hill. We're not Liberty Lake. We want room. We want space. We want walls. Whose idea is this to come up with this lovey-dovey, everybody's gonna socialize? I don't want to socialize.
Well, from the map standpoint, again, we're gonna be getting into this phase coming up. But I can probably imagine that a lot of the areas, if you're in one of these yellow areas, there's I can't guarantee anything, but there's probably gonna be a good chance that those areas will stay low density.
But I'm saying that you're discussing new.
The ones that are consolidated, like they're already designated for mixed use or commercial. They just might be consolidated into one designation. So we're not changing, or at least right now, we're not talking about changing any of the yellow areas into a mixed use designation, for instance.
Okay,
It could happen,
Yeah, I'm
but
not talking about that, but in you, some of the slides back, you're wanting to convince me to have all these exits and everything. Well, also that is increased crime because that gives bad guys more exits to leave. My dad was a cop for a long time, so I look at the security and all that kind of crap. And you're having the parks and all this, all of that, you've got to think the these things through in more than one area.
We have been hearing people that really like those concepts. If you look at the dots on the posters so far, right, it's all 3s and 4s and
I'm
5s.
just saying,
So there are mixed opinions. We've been hearing from folks
where's
who
the
like
new
those things and the things
precinct
that
gonna
don't.
be?
but-
Where's the new, I mean, I'm trying to understand, okay, you wanna grow this area because of all the lands. We have 2 deputies for this area. And if they get someone, they have to drive all the way downtown to take them to jail. So in this comp plan, is there any, we need a new jail up here, we need a precinct up here, if we're gonna
Yeah,
have
and
all of
that's
this growth. It's, I mean, we are already watching
That's-
this
that's
space,
all
like,
gonna be-
That's really important. That's
For sure.
way bottom,
Yeah,
And
For sure.
way bottom.
kind of
And now
that's
we
how it
have
works, is when
thousands
cities
of
grow,
people coming.
they get more services.
So is there a
Or-
plan for that?
Maybe,
Yeah,
Matt,
sure.
if you want to talk,
Yeah.
maybe bring up just the elements and some of the types of analysis and work
Yeah.
that goes into these.
For sure, yeah, so this is, as I'm sure Scott would tell you if he was here, this is one of the like 32 moving pieces going on right now, and one really important thing that makes comp planning is that you have to align the growth that you're planning for with the capital facilities and services that you need to service that growth. So the imperative that the county has to accommodate growth is, it's not, oh, we're coming to need because we've got land. The county has to plan for roughly 30,000 new residents in its unincorporated urban growth areas and around 5,000 or 6,000 new residents and this is like demographic stuff that the county and the cities have all agreed to. So across the whole county, across all of the urban growth areas, the county has to find room for 30-ish thousand new residents. Some of that could be, if you can't accommodate it in the current urban growth area and you can't make enough, zoning or land use changes to accommodate it, then there may be UGA expansion discussions, but we're not there yet because we're just barely getting started with that process. But that's kind of the imperatives that, the state says you have to plan for an amount of growth that makes sense. This county and the cities work together to come up with like how they're gonna, like what population target they want and how it's gonna get spread around between all the jurisdictions. So that's kind of the reason why we have to plan for growth is that, as you said, it's, there's some amount of like growth, you may not like it, but unfortunately growth happens and it's better to plan for it than to not. And one of the ways we do that is by capital facilities lining up with the transportation and land use changes that we have to make in order to accommodate that population. And police and fire is one of those things. And so part of determining, and this will get explained more like when we get into the EIS portion of the project, is that one of the key pieces of analysis you have to do is, okay, here's like the land that could theoretically develop, but can we build enough, roads, sewer, water, have enough capital funding for a precinct or a new fire station to serve that expanding population with the levels of service that the county has established standards to provide. And if you can't do those things, if there's no way to build your way into the infrastructure that you need to serve those areas, then you have to go back to your land use element and make a new plan, essentially. So that's kind of the control over the whole
That
thing.
didn't happen and that's why all these apartments are coming up and now you guys are having to catch up because people didn't think about that.
Well, that's so in part. So one of the reasons that this is going to be a complete refresh, in some cases, in some elements, a complete rewrite of the comp plan is that the county's kind of been limping along on a plan that was written in 2001 and it's kind of been amended piecemeal over the years, but there were a couple growth management hearings board decisions and Supreme Court cases that kind of invalidated portions of previous plans. So it's really kind of this like cobbled together thing that's been going for like 25 years. And so that's one of the reasons why you may see some things that don't look like they were planned very well, whether because of in the past coordination issues between the county and other service providers, or in some cases the state or the hearings board saying, yeah, you can't do that. Now your old plan is back in effect. So that's one of the reasons why you might look around and go like, this doesn't seem like it's coordinated very well. That's because it's not.
So what is the county doing to fix?
Yeah, so that's a great question.
For example, I mean, think everyone knows exactly the space, and we actually live 2 houses off of Placemaking, so we see a lot of the traffic. So we've got, and I love to see the smaller apartment complexes that are going in there right now that look like smaller units, or ones that look like they fit with the landscape and actually have adequate parking and looks like probably a, you know, recreational area for the people that live there, and hopefully a space for these people that have their pets to have their dog. I mean, I think all apartment
It's the place
complexes,
with school and pooping all over.
I think all apartment complexes should be required to have a dog space. But the one specific unit is 4 stories high, which is higher than any unit we have. It's more space than more buildings than we have, but yet if you look at it, there's absolutely no room. The first time we get a foot of snow, there's no place to put that snow, which is then gonna lead to flooding on Hastings, which already floods there. And so, not to mention the amount of traffic and speeding and the things that come in, the amount of kids that are gonna come into schools, which is, my son grew up in, we lived in an apartment for a while when he went to the main school district. I don't have a problem with that, but it seems like specifically with that complex and knowing who I think is the builder on that complex, we regularly run into problems with that builder. And we regularly seem to see that policies don't get followed, or it feels like that.
Last thing I said was they're gonna have to follow.
Yeah, that's.
You know, and it's like, I'm sorry, like, I would love to be involved more, and honestly, I'm only here because I have family that's here.
Well, thank you for coming anyway.
Yeah, no, but it's something that's very important to me. We talk about it in our house regularly. But just because I see a white poster board that I drive by that's in tiny, small writing that I can't even get to if I wanted to pull over to. I feel like when buildings go in, there should be notification that goes out in the mail, or at least announcements on local news about certain areas, and that doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's.
Sorry, I threw a lot at
Those
you.
are all really good questions. So,
And they say they do it, but the range is very little, but it affects more people than just. the
I can
little
tell
bit.
you, we live across the street
Yeah.
from an apartment complex and never got anything in the mail.
I talked to Dr. Kurtz about that too.
yeah, so those are all really good questions. So on the question of your first question about sort of like what's being done to like coordinate a little better this time. That's definitely a question that you know, I not being Scott Chesney and not qualified to answer. So if you want specifics, you'll probably want to get in touch with him. But I will say that in the past, I know that because Scott's told me that like Public Works and the Building and Planning Division didn't always have a very tight relationship, and they've been working really hard to try and fix that. Another piece of coordination that needs to happen, that has happened variously in the past with varying degrees of success, is between the cities and the county. So stuff in the urban growth area is, depending on where you are, is sometimes served with utilities by like City of Spokane. So coordination with them is really important, making sure that they have enough capacity to service an area that you're planning to grow into. It's nice because fellow from the city here tonight was talking to us. We were talking about the environmental impact statements. We're going through that process at the same time. And Scott and the folks from the city or City of Spokane are working together on closely on that sort of thing. So that's kind of all the information that I have on that topic for you now. If you have any more specific questions, I urge you to get in touch with Scott Chesney, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. Your other questions are really good. So that kind of gets to the relationship. Bob hinted at this a little bit, but that really gets to the relationship between your plan and your code. And if you don't have good code, or don't adequately enforce your existing code, you can't implement a good plan. So a plan is useless unless you've got code and investment decisions that are consistent with it and that actually do what you want them to do. You don't always get it right the first time. Sometimes you pass code and you projects come in and you go, oh, this isn't working very well, and then you have to change it. But part of the work that we're doing here with this is that, I urge you, once we're done with, questions and stuff here, we've got like one more slide. We've got these signs over here, and we want you guys to vote on if you like these ideas. Like, for real, we actually really do want that, because if there's, if it's like a barbell situation where like some people hate it, some people love it, it's okay, well, maybe we need to revisit this concept entirely. Or if everybody hates it, then we go, maybe we don't do this one. Right, so we actually really do want you to do that. But these are examples of all the stuff that Bob covered. These are examples of regulations that implement the plan, right? So if the plan says, new development has to have, well-connected trails, for example. Not saying it's going to say that, but if it did say that, you need a regulation that was effective at getting that done. Otherwise, you're going to get people cutting corners and coming in with inadequate stuff. And if it's not well written, then the county sometimes has to say like, well, we have to approve it because that's what the rules say. So it's why it's important to get the rules as right as you can the first time.
And also, we've been around long enough to see a lot of different situations, and, some cities and counties will, at the policy stage, they might like some ideas, but when it gets time to coding them, they may balk.
Yeah.
So this is where the public input, the more that you can illustrate their support for certain concepts, the better chance I think there is of getting it coded.
Couple more questions?
I got a question for Bob. Hey, you said these big developments and the great ideas, all the integration of different concepts, work for large scale properties. Okay.
Yeah.
How many large scale developers are participating in these forums?
That's a good question, and I know the county has assembled big individual lists that they've been trying to notify, and we had folks coming from Spokane at the earlier meeting too, but I think that there's been an effort to try to coordinate with folks.
The county
and
does
get
have,
them here.
the county does have technical advisory committees, some of which meet pretty regularly, some of which may have only met once or not at all yet, because we're not there in the process. I don't know, do you guys know if there's is there like an urban TAC that has developers on it that you're aware of?
I think right now we don't have a. I think there are plans to have a housing technical advisory committee, but we have not. So that one has not started meeting yet. So that's and that would be the one ostensibly where there would be a lot of developer interest.
Yeah, like we'll
And we are
definitely make sure
getting
that.
that list together.
Okay.
I'm with the I'm the clerk of the planning commission, and I've been tasked with updating our major contact list, so that we will have access and communication with those developers that are going to be a part of.
But that's a good comment, and I think there'll need to be
Well,
more
another comment
engagement.
is, the other side is guys like me or individuals with, some kind of interest in having the boundary expanded a bit. I've been holding some land for about 35 years. It used to be UR 3.5, and now it's 20 acres, one house. Yeah, and I was out of town working when all this came about, and I have one small paragraph that described to me how it happened. Go look it up. There's been some resolutions downtown. Okay, so I'm here. I missed a few meetings, but what you just said was we can go vote over there, and this small fraction of people with their barbell, I like this, I don't like that, is gonna somehow give you license to do a certain thing or not?
Not on its own, for sure. It's just one piece of the puzzle. So, so in the process of developing the goals and policies for the comp plan. So this is aside from the, well, it's related to the environmental impact portion of the project, but, there's a number of different ways of getting input on some of these concepts. So as we're revising an element, say the housing element or the land use element, for example, there's a bunch of different layers to it, right? There's, okay, what do we need to do because of changes to state law? And then there's, are there current problems that need to be fixed that we can, like policies that are like outdated or like, this program clearly isn't working, so maybe we cut it out of the plan or whatever. And then there's what are some new things that we might need to solve problems. Some of them might be these things, and if the commissioners select, we'll put like a whole basket of potential code changes in the EIS. The commissioners will select stuff that accomplishes their goals and also hopefully complies with the GMA. But the input from workshops like this and from the earlier ones and the online versions are just a piece of the puzzle. So if when the planners for the county put together like a staff report, they can say, oh, this particular concept, scored highly in our placemaking workshops. We also got, we got 300 comments in the EIS, scoping process that talked about this, whatever the case may be. I'm just kind of.
But this wasn't
coming up with stuff,
advertised enough. This
Okay.
was not
It was advertised wrong,
advertised.
too,
Yes,
at the time.
that is true. Yeah.
So you're not getting, I mean, I agree, there's a little handful of people.
A small fraction of a
Yeah.
fraction.
As to how many, I only found out this was tonight because my friend texted me, she happened to see it.
Online, I
And the
assume.
same thing happened the first time. It was like a couple hours, it's like, oh, what the heck is this?
There's something, I feel like there's something
Really
going on with the,
Poorly
yeah.
advertised.
And you signed
Which
you
people
put your
believe
name
is done
down,
on purpose, and so that makes people mad.
Yeah.
but you wrote your name down in the first one on the
Yeah.
list, right?
There's something going on with the notifications because you're not the first person today who's told me that they signed up the first time and they didn't get we sent
Even
out.
the people that didn't sign up.
Yeah.
This needs to be advertised much better.
Okay, well, what would you suggest? Do you have any, like, where would you look for stuff like this?
Ask for,
Just for news ability.
there's even meet high school, tell your parents. I mean, it's
Put it out to
evolving
the
here,
schools.
yeah,
Yeah, people are dropping the spokes in review. It's a worth.
no, yeah, that's what he said.
Well, yeah,
In the newspaper, I read it in Sunday's newspaper.
Nobody reads.
There was a lot of ads. That's how I found out.
Okay, so somebody did find out.
The placemakers, that was, it's difficult to understand, so, like, an article, something that said, come talk about future growth and development in communities and what that looks like in North Spokane, you would have had 300 people here, I think.
I don't know that I agree with you because I asked 3 people to come with me tonight. I'm here alone. They weren't interested. They're just not interested.
I
Yeah,
had.
well,
people that-
they'll be interested when they
We
see
all
the final
feel
result.
together, right?
Yeah.
Oh, there's gonna be a lot of other touch points. This isn't gonna be like, we go into some cave and work on our petroglyphs and then we come out
I'm
in
just saying,
6 months and
if
it's
you
done.
want community
Yeah.
input, you need to advertise it
Okay.
much better. And I think, and the schools send out emails and they send out things to, maybe do a little mailer, even the postcard mailer, that doesn't cost that much. To
For the
the
whole
areas that
county,
will be affected.
I mean, those are, I don't know, usually not speaking for the county, but as a consultant working for cities, that's one of the,
And I know it
those are
costs a lot.
those are actually pretty expensive and they're rarely able to do those for a broad area like this kind of thing. But definitely better use of emails.
Or even
digital
big
and-
signs that you could do a QR code and get the information off that. Because you're making people upset, so they're like, they don't care about, they're not gonna listen to us anyways, they didn't even tell us this was coming.
Well, yeah, and it makes people not want to participate,
Yeah,
which,
and
I
they-
get it.
I mean, they don't want to participate, they don't trust the government, they don't trust the county.
I would highly encourage you to follow the Facebook page for the Spokane County and then use that and share those on your community
Who goes
pages.
on Facebook?
Well, we just try for social media, your local news, and then if you can share those with communities, those are great. So there's a lot of community pages that we can't get onto because we have to actually like live in that community. So if you go onto the county page and share that within your community, then everybody can kind of spread it out and
I mean,
Yeah.
yes, I need to go, but a lot of people have gone off of Facebook, so.
For sure.
And we've tried local news stations, so we have had a couple,
There are a lot of people
the
on
news
local
run
news.
it.
Well, but
So,
So I mean, that's what I'm saying, the signs, or the schools, or you do the little, I mean, a big sign.
we have a lot of QR codes back there as well, so if you want to, you can take a handful of those and share them with your neighbors too, and that has a QR code to the county page as well, that's our project page, so, yeah, there's a few different ways, but we're always open to suggestions.
I know you had a question.
Yeah, my question is, my first question though is on the pictures you showed that had the yellow, different, projected types of housing. But I'm 85 years old and I will not drive downtown. We go to the Opera House only. And the reason is I can park in the barn and walk across safely to the concert. I will not go downtown after 4 o'clock in the afternoon because of the street people. Down here, we live right next door. We want to walk down to the credit union to Bettmeyer, and there are street people down there, and it's not safe for my wife, who is beyond 80, and I to walk down there, and other people in our neighborhood. So when you talk about those kinds of communities, which I favor, and I like that idea, how are you building into that 2 things? One, the safety component, and secondly, because the safety issue is so much comprises of people with social issues, drugs and whatever, unemployment and homeless, how are you able to build that into that so that those social issues can be taken into consideration and we still won't find those people on the streets and being providing an unsafe environment for us? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a challenge everywhere. Yeah, it's huge. I mean, a lot of what we're trying to do is create visibility in having, the pedestrian routes and putting them in locations where there's visibility and people can see things, because usually a lot of the bad stuff happens in spots where they're less visible.
Not anymore. They threw it right out in the open.
Yeah, I know. That's where it gets really tough. There's lots of other layers of challenges that
I mean, the Children's Sun Trail, supposedly trail that runs along the freeway, that is so unsafe.
Yeah.
well, I know we talked about that.
So unsafe.
That's the example that he's talking about.
Yeah, that's where the subdivision turns their back on the trail, and so there aren't people looking out for it.
But I was at the Union Gospel Mission meeting last night, and they shared about a fourplex situation that they're building in Coeur d'Alene, and I think they're wanting to build one here someplace in Spokane. And as you were talking about showing there, I thought that's a great idea, because they have the people that they're working with through the different stages of recovery within a confined area, and slowly allow them to move out into the community where they could be successful. And I could see something like that being built into the community that you're talking about here, where something like that could be very successful. But it would have to be planned into the community at the beginning. It would be a challenge to just drop it into a community once it is. That's a real concern, and I hope that somehow. Then the other crazy question I had.
Look, that's my reasonable question.
The crazy question, I don't understand sometimes how regulations, and I was a school administrator for 35 years, so I understand bureaucracy only too well. But we moved here 25 years ago out on Mount Spokane Road, remodeled a 5,000 square foot home. I wanted to put a second kitchen in the lower level because we entertain large groups through our ministries. I could not put an oven in the lower kitchen. And it delayed the process of our move by 6 months until I could convince the county that I was not building a mother-in-law home
Mhm.
or taking in housing,
Yeah.
that it was strictly for ministry. And they finally approved it as a catering kitchen. And to make myself believe, I offered a meal and sold it for a charity. So that, and I had the documentation so that when I sold the home, I could prove that I was legal, that I could not use it as a mother-in-law.
Yeah.
We did not advertise it as a mother-in-law. My question is, how in the world can something be so rigid in that kind of a situation? Can they not make the guidelines as they're written sufficiently flexible to take in unique situations, although I don't consider that to be unique?
I think that's a kind of a great example of the current system, which is, like you said, very rigid, and it's all defined around, and we've been working on some related projects where it's all for whatever reason, the codes have to define something, a home as something, and the way that it is worked out is that they're defined around the kitchen and they're defined around the stove, and you can do all sorts of stuff. But if you add a second stove, then it becomes 2 units, but anyhow, that's just sort of, you have to, I don't know, the way definitions work is weird and it's kind of technical, but it was basically because we had a system, or the current system is that it's one house on a lot is the only thing you're allowed to do in your zone, probably in most zones, in most residential zones. So basically, one of the big benefits of having more flexibility in addition to, providing for different stages of life and various things, is that it allows property owners to a little bit more flexibility when you want to do something with your property. And you don't have the county breathing down your neck about installing a second stove necessarily. I'm not saying that, still a permitting process and everything, but is that what you're describing is a symptom, or is a, I don't know.
It's a very common challenge, very common, yeah.
Of the rigidity of the rules that are currently on the books.
Yeah, they told me I could put a double wide mobile manufactured home in my driveway.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this and I've had rentals for over 20 years. And what just popped in my head when you were asking about the developers is, if I were a developer, I wouldn't do that. So I'm not gonna make as much money. And I know about permits in Spokane County is horrible, horrible. I've had to work with them and it's horrible. I went to the city, which I can't believe I'm saying this, but I went to the city, moved a house onto a lot, I went in one room, boom, 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 done. Not the county, it took 3 years to do a driveway. But I'm looking at all these different types of permits, all these different types of setbacks, all these different, there's different rules for every single one of those. So how are you gonna get a developer to do that?
Well, again, the rules, right? That's part of this process. We make the rules easier and to encourage, and even in some cases,
Make them do it.
encourage or even require that right in housing, right? It's like you're totally right. Like it's real hard and not profitable in the current system. There's no reason why you would do that, but these things can change.
I got a question. Are you done with the presentation?
Yeah.
Well, there's just that next steps
I
slide.
have like one more thing.
No,
to talk about
that's
next
a couple
steps.
questions for 7:30. But, this is ideal, and I've seen this actually in Boise. I have some friends that live there, and they have the beautiful land development, ponds, cattails, turned into swampy areas, a few ducks here and there, trees. My friend Jake was on the board for the landscaping. Dead tree, dead tree, dead tree. Couldn't do anything about it. He was so frustrated, he quit. Okay, and it's all high-end, unaffordable for a lot of people. They're living in a $600,000-700,000 house within this community, and it has trails. We walked around, it was great, but it's not affordable. Now, we have kind of a hybrid right now, and Ian was talking about the gathering place. up in our neighborhood, they are building a North 40, and I'm telling you what, that is gonna be one gathering. And we have a yolk store, we have a brew cheese, we have a gas station. We have our own airport, and it's right there at the intersection of 206, Mount Spokane,
Mhm.
Highway 2. I live right next to that. So, down at Costco, a gathering place. Greenstone is gonna put 400 houses to the east. It used to be a nice, gray turf farm.
Yeah.
On your side.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, they
Been
still
out there.
have it, but they're out in 7 Mile, I think, with a new farm.
Hmm.
And it's gonna be another gathering place. They can walk to Costco,
Yeah.
and they can walk to now Fred's Appliance, which is right on the highway. So
And walk back with another.
Just the
Pay for
one.
the delivery.
Put it on the cargo
My
bike.
point is, you have some nice, clear slate, like Bob was saying, and these are great ideas, but they're gonna be expensive for most people. There's a lot of maintenance involved with that, and it's all good. I like places with trails. I ride a bike all the time. So,
Well-
but again, there's a lot of these places like our land has been surrounded by development because we didn't want to develop. And I got reverse zoned twice, down to 20 acres, and I'm in this purgatory of what they call urban reserve. And I've been advocating with powers to be to like get me in the limited area or maybe even the urban area. So I've been following this, not as closely as people that read the newspaper and get the meeting notices, but I pulled up the GMA and my God, I have no idea if anyone that's involved has ever even read through that. I mean, I pulled up just the urban area definitions and what you can do. It's 5 full pages out of RCW 3670 alpha. And the rest of it goes on for a week. And so how do you come up with what you're gonna do with such a mess to start with the state law?
Yeah,
And then you say, well, we're gonna just clean slate the old plan and start a new one. I mean, where's all this info come from?
yeah, that's a great question. So that leads me to kind of the next steps here. So to say it's a complete rewrite doesn't mean that there's not pieces of the current plan that may be useful. So it's not like it's gonna like, oh, everything has to get thrown in the trash and start completely from scratch. That's part of the process. Like you go through and you go like, okay, you know, are these still working? You know, does this still make sense? Are these still, sometimes it'll say like, oh, apply for this grant to get transportation funding. It's like, that was 20 years ago, so you like get rid of that, replace it with something new. But there are a lot of new things based on what we hear from the public and what we have to do to comply with all the new stuff in the GMA. There's some potential probably a lot of new policies, and actually the climate element that Riley and Cameron were talking about, that's a whole new element. So that's brand new. And you say about the GMA, Carson, not Cameron, I'm sorry. I'm just spitballing here. So the legislature almost never takes things away. They only add to the GMA, specifically. So yeah, it is mind-bogglingly complex. However, the State Department of Commerce is actually pretty helpful. They've spent the last probably 10 years writing like, God, I don't even know how many guidebooks, 30, like so many, because it's so complicated. The legislature has also provided the agency that's responsible for the administrative portion of the GMA with a lot of money and resources to help local governments.
And they do the
So a lot of
guidebooks, they do
resources.
webinars, and they do, like, they do a lot of, sort of training and resources for.
Makes it
local
even more
governments and
confusing.
stuff.
Go ahead, Rob, like that.
Look, they're actually really good. They've got people that can, if you got questions, you can like invite their
They've got a
people to a
Spokane
meeting
office.
and ask them
Yeah.
questions. And it is insanely complicated. I'm not gonna lie.
I was shocked. I never really looked into it, and I'm a technical guy, but working with technical specs with government jobs, and I've never seen anything like it. It's unreal.
Yeah, it's a real hodgepodge, that's for sure. You're not wrong. So, yeah, so, if anybody else have any other questions before I go through the?
Just a short one. How well does this plan, or will this plan work with the city of Spokane? How do they? Or do they mesh together?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, so the city, the county and the cities, and you guys can chime in on this as well, but the county and the cities are kind of forced to work together early in the process now because of some of the changes to the GMA. The county and the cities have to work together on that allocating the housing units between and the population growth between jurisdictions, and they also have to work together on the assessment of current land. So in order to figure out how much you have capacity for, you gotta like analyze your properties. And so these guys and their coworkers have been going around and around with city staff on that stuff for months. And so really early on, you have to coordinate pretty closely. And it's not just population in the housing units, it's like I mentioned before, it's capital facilities. So if in the UGA, if the city is the sewer and water provider, you have to get your like proposed land use changes to them pretty early on in the process so that they can assess whether they have the capability of serving that growth over the 20-year, 2026 to 2046. That's just two examples. You guys have any others you want to highlight?
I don't know if I have another example per se, but I would just add to that that there's kind of a regional framework where all of the planning departments from the different jurisdictions in Spokane County kind of work together. Planning Technical Advisory Committee is the long name for it, but that's where we see a lot of the collaboration at a lot of these different important steps happening.
But they don't mesh together, because I listen to the city and the county meetings and they don't mesh.
They don't always get along, but they do talk, which is
They talk and that's about it.
it's like, it's like keep those lines of communication open.
Yeah.
They don't always agree, but they do talk.
They don't, yeah, like
Yeah.
there is a something's going on.
But it is nice because the city and the city of Spokane and the county are going through the same environmental, the SEPA process for the environmental impact statement. And so we're gonna have to be doing the same kinds of analysis using assumptions for land capacity and stuff that have been kind of, they're not exactly the same assumptions because obviously they're different jurisdictions with different codes, but they've been communicating a lot about it. So they kind of know that they kind of can translate from one to the other. So it's not perfect and they certainly don't always agree on stuff, but there are a bunch of avenues for collaboration, which is better than it used to be. And you hate to say, thanks legislature for forcing us to work together, but it's kind of true, honestly. They've said you got to do your housing allocations and get all that stuff straight before you even start your comp plan update, and that means that you have to work together. So.
And in the comp plan, you're wanting to grow this area, but I still don't understand why I've been here, I've lived here a long time. Before you guys approved, not you guys, you, but before they approved all these apartments, there were for rent signs constantly out there. And now there's even more for rent signs all the time. And it's like, hey, they're not full. Why are they building more? Doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, no, it's
So why is this area picked to build even more?
I think they're trying to drive the rent down.
Yeah, the more you have, the less that the rent will be able to charge.
Well, that hasn't happened.
Well, that.
No,
That's just.
all of these rents around here are more than my mortgage, and I'm on almost 2 acres.
the way that I think about it is that, and it's kind of cold comfort when you're trying to afford a place to live, but more units means that compared to how much population you have means that the increase in rents are smaller than they otherwise would have been.
Which isn't true.
Which is well, I mean, again, it's
If we don't-
impossible to prove the counterfactual.
And it's a popular area, it's a desirable area,
But
and
they're
so
not moving here, that's my point.
I think the numbers would show that they are, and the buildings are evidence of that. Even though there's a for rent sign, you always need to have vacant units. That's part of the business model, and it's essential to the housing system, right?
I was in the
For rent
rental
signs.
business for a
Okay.
long time. I got that part.
So there's always gonna be for rent signs, basically, but I don't know, if the buildings are being built, that's evidence of demand, it seems like. I mean, it'd be great.
They wouldn't build it if they couldn't rent at least some
It's
of
just
them.
a lot of money to throw away.
They
on
just
it.
keep, they keep saying, oh, it's been broke here, and it's like,
It's
It is.
The past
Hey,
15.
I know my adult
That's-
kids
that's
can't
what-
afford to rent.
Yeah,
an
affordability and
apartment.
availability are certainly very
Yeah,
different
so
things.
called affordable housing, there is none.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, that's
I bought my
speaking of-
rental houses for $80,000.
Wow. I mean, speaking of intractable problems, you know, we go from homelessness to housing affordability. How much time do we have? Oh my God, 10 minutes?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, so there may be some, like a softening in the rental market here locally, that's totally possible. And also some vacancy, as you know, since you manage rentals, some vacancy is healthy. I think, I mean, so, yeah, I live over in Snohomish County and, you know, everybody's gotten pretty used to the vacancy rate being like 0.5%. I think people would probably freak out if all of a sudden there were a bunch of like, you know, vacant for rent signs, but some vacancy is actually healthy. And I think sometimes after a period of intense growth, you kind of like, I don't know, for me at least, I like kind of forget, you get used to there being no vacancies anywhere, and then all of a sudden there's a lot of vacancies, it's like, oh my God, the sky is falling, it's like, oh wait, no, it's just I've gotten used to there not being any units at all, so available, so but there may also be a softening in the local market, totally possible. But you know, builders wouldn't be building apartments if they didn't think they could rent them, so it's a chicken or egg
Then I'll
problem.
take the signs down.
I had one more comment on your little master plan of the ideal utopian
Yeah.
neighborhood lighting. Is anybody looking at the lighting? You got trees and trails and the mixed
Yeah.
use. How about lighting? Spokane County is the worst on lighting.
Mm.
They have down lighting within property lines for every code section. They came up with a little special paragraph that allows floodlights in areas where, as long as it doesn't shine on a residence adjacent, doesn't say anything about going a half mile over to my place, okay? And I have beat everyone to death on this, and they won. The guy that has the lights won. It's shining not down, and they're, you know, they're sodium vapor, it looks like a full moon when there is no moon. That's how much light comes half a mile over to my place.
Wow.
Mm.
And I'd like that to be addressed and take that paragraph out of the code.
So you're saying that they're too restrictive in many
No, it
ways,
just allows
but
Bob
they're
Smith
too,
to put up a few lights when his actual master plan for the development, home sales, says that he's gonna have lights like this. Well, he put up 2 poles with 3 lights going out and 2 on the other pole going out. And I had Josh Kearns over there, I had John Peterson over there, I've had complaints made, and they all just said, no, meets code.
it meets code.
Okay.
Interesting.
And they had a paragraph that John Ross Kelly signed, and the actual went with that, said, as long as it wouldn't shine, but it allows it, because they don't care. And guess what? They told me my complaint was the only one they've ever had in the county on lighting.
That seems
So,
unlikely.
yeah,
On a
Well,
different subject.
so anyway, I gotta go, but thanks
Okay.
for being.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Don't have enough lighting. There's not like
Yeah.
holes.
Yeah, anyway, they're,
We've worked on some lighting ordinances,
Lighting's
so
important.
Yeah.
we'll take a look at that, but that's probably a good subject for some policy
well,
language.
it has to do with code enforcement. You can have all the code sections you want. On the same plan with the lighting, it's supposed to be down, it says down, has all the notes. It says all this green landscaping and trees and everything. They have round pots with dead plants. And I even think they just recently moved the pots. They have nothing.
Mm,
So no one comes back and looks at if they're complying with the original plan. So you can have all the great plans you want, but if it's no maintenance or no enforcement, you got nothing.
Thank you.
All right, I gotta go.
I
Thanks for
read
being
the
here.
same
We'd really like you guys to get to share your thoughts quickly on the posters. There's post notes to share our thoughts on the mission statement as well on your way out the door. And also, we're out here for more questions, right? We don't have to do all the questions in a group setting.
The important thing to know about your next steps is, pardon?
Sorry, when's your next meeting for this?
So this is kind of, it for these public placemaking workshops, but
And
there,
everyone come to your office.
yeah, well, there'll be a lot of other, there'll be a lot of, I mean, you know,
Come on down, we'd love a visit.
yeah, come on, down, seriously.
The scoping meeting, right, is May 7th, right? Which
Yep, that's next week.
Next week.
So there's an online, a virtual meeting for scoping for the EIS, and the comment period for that runs through May 30th. That's kind of the next big step. We're doing a bunch of stuff under the hood, like looking at some of the elements and doing like analyzing the policies and the Kimley Horn, who's on our team, who's not here tonight, is working on the starting to put the growth alternatives together for the EIS. So a lot of stuff going on. The other public things that are going on that are, these ones are gonna be rural focused. There's 3 rural open houses, the next 3 weeks, right?
Yeah, I
So
think
there's
the
one,
6th, the 14th, and I want to say the 21st, but double check the county webpage.
so those will be focused on, because the county has to plan for rural areas as well. And we're gonna have open houses in Valley Ford and Deer Park and Cheney. And so that'll be a chance to talk about like, the current plan has like a definition of rural character. Does that still reflect people's feelings? How do people feel about like the little small, communities sprinkled throughout the rural area? Are they meeting their needs? Are there threats to those areas that will, make them not super viable over the next 20 years? Questions like that. Also questions about like, better or different ways of preserving small tract ag land for agriculture, topics like that. And there's the climate resilience component as well. So we've been making some materials for that. Cascadia has as well, and the county staff will be in Valley Ford, Deer Park, and Cheney over the next 3 weeks. So those are the next public meetings. We are also trying to, I know it's a lot of information for y'all, but we're working on some work on the critical areas ordinance as well, which also is going to be part of the environmental assessment of the comp plan. And we're not sure exactly what form it's going to be. So please, if you haven't signed up for updates on this, I know that you guys are working hard on the mailing list. I think there's been some weird hiccups with that, but we're going to be, I don't know if it'll be meetings or if it'll be some other format, but we're going to be having some outreach and engagement with folks around the critical areas ordinance as well, probably in the next 2 months at some point. So those are that's the time, kind of the windows that we're working with here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Please hit up the boards on the way out, put some pins in Cascadia's map for hazards that you're experiencing.
We have,
Thank you for coming.
So then I need to-
Maybe it just went out.
Yeah, it's very.
Yeah.
That are working late right now.